My name is Ulrich Breiner. I'm living now here on Vancouver Island in Duncan. I was grown up on a little farm in Switzerland, and first I made my apprenticeship as a cabinet maker, and after army service I couldn't leave the farm fast enough, and I went to sea, became a merchant seaman, and eventually built my own sailboat, sailed kind of all over the world, and eventually I ended up here on Vancouver Island having my own boat building shop. I did that for years. During that time I was always interested in machining, and so I got myself a nice little hobby machine shop, and I built several fancy little models like 9-cylinder radial and one rotary engine, 4-cylinder flat tire engine, and it's still my hobby now. So at about 4 years ago, I had to go to Ontario, and I met a guy there. He had a watch and clock making business in Burlington, Ontario. His name is John Bowman, and we got to talk, and we became good friends. And he sent me at one time some books and paperwork, and in there was one sheet of drawing which was a clock built for the University of Chicago, and I started poring over those drawings for days and months, and I know it was very complicated stuff. It says that this clock was designed for the University of Chicago, but that's as much as I know about. And I know the drawings were made about 100 years ago, but on this sheet of drawings there's not one measurement, so I had to all do with trial and error, the sizes. Then came the weights. Even the pendulum started from about 14 inches long, was way too fast, and finally I got almost a 4-foot pendulum there. So the same with the weights on the clock drive. I started, I think, with 5 pounds, and I got 15 pounds of lead down there, and then the other ones on the hour bells and the quarter bells. I had to increase the leverage to get. Now I get about close to 20-hour running time out of it. I didn't have the comfort of a 100-meter, 300-foot tower like they have in London, and my lady wouldn't let me dig a hole into the ground here in the basement to get them further down. So, but I think to wind them up and have them running for at least 12 hours, it's okay for a showpiece. I also try to get to see this clock in Chicago. I would have traveled there to take pictures, and I pestered those guys, and they were actually not very friendly, but it turned out that they didn't have this clock. This clock was never built. So I gave up on the university and went my own way. So it had to start with choosing the right size, the right scale. The model I built here is roughly 1/3 the size of a real one, but there was no measurements anywhere, so I had to come up with a scale which suited my machinery and everything, and I started fabricating every little part for it. Getting all the material together is a big deal. And I had some friends, engineer friends, they would help me with machining parts, but I can say it's mostly my doing. I spend hours, uncounted hours on the computer, Google things and trying to get the materials together. About those bells, I finally found this bell foundry. It's Taylor Bells in England, and it took me a long time to get those bells, but I can understand. I talked to a very elderly guy who did those little bells, and he had to tune them exactly to this Westminster sound, those four little bells, so you get this nice melody. The biggest bell here actually has two hammers, and it's got two cams down here. This is because in that melody there are two things so close together that they wouldn't have had time to get the hammer away and back in again. So they put two hammers onto that bell. 4 strokes on the quarter past, and 8 strokes at half past. Three quarter hour is 12 bells, and then 16 at the full hour, and then about 6 seconds after a last ding of the 3/4 hour, the 1 hour bell, which is the bigger one, has to start. That big one, I tried a cowbell, which came from my home place, and it wasn't quite the right thing, but I had a little brass bell outside the house, and I sacrificed that for this bell tower. It was a long process too. Each of these, the 3 different one, each one, they have to come apart so you can take them out of the mold, get them together, the 2 half sand, and pour them in. And I had this old fella in Victoria. It's called H&Back Foundry, and he did a good job. And so, but still, that's how they come out with all these burrs and leftover. Everything had to be filed out and cleaned. And then the big deal was to get all these shafts into the right spots. So I had my drawings 1:1. I made the castings 2% bigger for shrinkage, but as I say, they don't shrink exactly by these 2%. It all depends which is the hottest spot. But then to transfer all these shafts and onto these castings, I made a pattern here with wood, where I had just about every pinion and gear, because normally the clockmakers they use what they call a depthing tool, where they put both wheels together and then move the shafts in and out till they have the exact distance for the shafts. But I couldn't work with that because all the shaft holes, they were all made already. So what I did, I machined the small gears, the pinion first, and then with the big gear, I made just a plastic segment, and I machined them till they had a nice movement and a little bit play. And then I built the big gears, also all the cams for the sounds, for the bells and all. That was all laid out on this board. These frames, there's actually wood. Some people won't believe it, but the lower parts, the stands, they're made out of plywood. But if you paint them and finish them long enough, nobody can see that they're not metal. And when I started out, and finally put the hands up here, and everything there is driven with one shaft going up. So I had it going and watched it, and I watched the hands, and the bloody thing went backwards. That was a good sign that this clock was never built after those drawings. But luckily, all I had to do is bring this bevel gear from the inside to the outside, which then changed the direction of all the gears. And when you look up in there, that one shaft comes up to the crown gear, they call it. From there it goes out to all four clock faces, and then behind each clock face is a 1 to 12 gear, which it's called a motion gear, which then drives from the center, from the big hand. It drives the hour hand on the outside in the exact 1 to 12 gear. So now we should just come up to 6 o'clock. See the mechanism. It's hard to explain everything. It goes into what they call the warning, where you just see this. Everything has to be loose, and when it falls down into the cam, it starts the whole process. So now in a few seconds we should get on this side. It's only hanging on this pole now, which is a lever inside. This one will fall down, then the 16 dings on these 4 bells will start ringing. Once that is over, a few seconds later, the big bell will start sounding the hours. I got it within 1 second per hour, which is very good for a clockwork like this. But as I said, the main pendulum is in the right length, and up here we have a fine adjustment, which just the slightest little adjustment brings the pendulum up and down. I mean, it shortens or lengthens the pendulum, and that gives you the right time. Hopefully you can adjust within a second a day or whatever. The whole pendulum hangs on a 5 thou thick spring steel. That's the hinge for where the pendulum hangs on. This clock here, it's the same. It comes off the 1 hour shaft. It's also got a motion gear behind with that 1 to 12 gear. But this is where the guy who goes up to wind the clock, he can see what time it is, and then he might have somebody else looking at the face up there, and if it's out of whack, there is a whole mechanism in there where he can adjust the time of the 4 faces independent from this small clock here from the display. This is the heart of this clock, which it's called a double 3-legged gravity escapement. It's quite complicated and very delicate to build and to adjust. And my watchmaker buddy, he actually told me that a friend of his tried to make this just with the pendulum, just as a fragment, and he never got it to run. And he died before he got it to run. I said to my friend, "It's good you mentioned it to me, you know." So that is called the maintaining system. When the guy looks after a clock, he comes with his handle trying to wind the clock, and this handle is in front where he has to put the handle. So he has to lift this handle up, and now you see underneath where that segment engages with the big wheel, and that together with that lump of lead will drive the clock while he can engage that gear, and then he can wind the clock while winding the weight up, while the clock is driven by that maintaining system. So once it's done, he takes the handle out, gets the gear out of the way, and he puts this lever back down out of the way again in front of the winding shaft. If he forgets that, there is a click spring on that segment where the big wheel can ratchet over without stopping the whole clock. I know these drawings are around, but as far as I know, nobody ever tackled the whole thing. And even my partner or my friend in Ontario, he cannot believe that I got this clock working and did every part without the prior knowledge of clockmaking. And I don't want to be a clockmaker. I wanted to be a machinist. That's why I built it like hobby machining with the tools I had and everything. But it was a long effort. Why I'm doing this YouTube video, because it's not much good if I just keep this down in my basement here. I like people who see it, and I will go to some of those American Clock and Watchmakers Association. They're having those meetings and conferences. I'm concentrating right now on one which is going to be next May in down in Washington State somewhere, and I can transport the clock down there and show it. And they also have competition there, who people bringing their home project in, and I'll see what's going to happen there. What eventually will happen to the whole clock, I don't know yet. It's even I should think about it because of my age and everything, but it eventually, hopefully, goes to a museum where people can see it. I know people apparently to my friend the clockmaker, they're gonna run my doors in trying to get drawings, trying to do it again. But unfortunately, I don't have drawings made for anybody else. I used to work on my machine. I had the drawings on the drawing board. I bring the parts in, there's grease all over it and whatever. And I just did it as much as I needed for myself to make all these parts. And if somebody would really be interested, I wouldn't mind to help somebody to to make a set of drawing, or maybe even scan the whole thing and do it electronically, what apparently can do nowadays. So it's not a secret for me. Even there's so many things I had to come up myself with it, because, as I said, I never built a clock before. Took an old cuckoo clocks apart once. That's about it,